The trade station of Arkan 7 was never quiet. It was a place full of shouting voices, bright neon lights, and the smell of hot metal every hour. Workers, aliens, traders, and smugglers pushed through the narrow halls like a river that never stopped. And in that river walked Ryan, a young human worker who kept his head down and tried to survive one day at a time. Ryan had lived on Arkan 7 for 3 hard years. He repaired machines, lifted cargo, and worked jobs no one else wanted. Life was not easy, but he knew how to stay invisible. In a station full of danger, invisibility was the best shield. But that day, something strange pulled him out of his quiet routine. As he walked through the main market, the crowd suddenly grew silent. The traders stopped talking. The buyers stepped back. And every eye turned toward the center of the plaza. Ryan stopped too, confused. A metal cage was being rolled out by 2 rough alien guards. Inside the cage sat a small figure, curled up, shaking, and covered in dirt. At first, Ryan thought it was some kind of injured animal. But when she lifted her head, he saw 2 bright golden eyes staring back at the crowd. It was a girl, an alien girl, young, thin, and clearly terrified. Her clothes were torn, her skin dull, and a sharp. Strange smell filled the air around her. Some aliens hissed and backed away because of the smell, but Ryan did not move. He felt something twist inside his chest, something he could not explain. The dealer stood on top of a crate and shouted, "Listen, everyone. This creature is useless. She smells bad, she eats too much, and no one wants her." The crowd laughed cruelly. The girl lowered her head as if she had heard such words many times. The dealer slammed his hand on the cage and yelled, "5 credits. That's it. Only 5. Take her away before I throw her in the trash chute." Ryan blinked. Shocked, 5 credits, $5 was what he spent on a small meal. Even cheap slaves never sold for such a tiny price. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. Ryan felt the girl's eyes on him again. There was fear in them, but also a small, silent plea. A plea for help. Ryan had never bought a slave before. He didn't believe in owning people, but the way she looked at him made his heartbeat go uneven. No one moved to buy her. The dealer sighed loudly and kicked the cage. "Fine, I will drop her in the recycler," he growled. The girl flinched and covered her face with her thin hands before Ryan realized what he was doing. His voice cut through the silence. "I'll buy her." The crowd turned to him in surprise. Some shook their heads as if he were stupid. Some smirked, waiting to see what disaster he had just invited into his life. But Ryan walked forward, feeling as if invisible strings pulled his feet. He held out 5 credits. The dealer snatched the money with a greedy grin. "Your problem now, human?" he laughed. He opened the cage and shoved the girl forward. She stumbled, almost falling. But Ryan caught her gently. She trembled under his touch, her skin warm and rough, like stone warmed by sunlight. For a moment, she looked up at him. There was deep confusion in her eyes, but also a tiny spark of hope. Ryan did not understand why buying her felt like stepping into a storm. But he knew one thing. He couldn't leave her behind. Then, just as he turned to lead her away, the station alarm blared. A red light flashed across the market walls. The crowd scattered in panic, shouting and pushing. Ryan froze for a moment. This wasn't a normal safety drill. This alarm meant someone dangerous had entered the station. Through the loudspeaker, a deep metallic voice boomed. "Attention all units. Secure the area. The target has been spotted." Ryan felt the girl clutch his sleeve with trembling fingers. Her golden eyes widened with pure terror. She whispered a single word, her voice cracking like broken glass. "They found me." In that moment, Ryan understood he had not bought a harmless slave. He had bought a secret, a dangerous secret worth killing for. And now, whoever hunted her was coming for both of them. Ryan pulled the alien girl into a side corridor as the alarm echoed across Arkan 7. People ran in every direction, pushing, shouting, trying to hide from whatever danger was coming. Rian kept his grip gentle but firm, guiding the girl away from the crowded market. She moved like a frightened shadow, her steps shaky, her breath sharp and fast. When they reached the quiet hallway behind the storage rooms, Rian finally spoke. "What do you mean? They found you?" he asked softly. The girl's eyes darted around as if she expected enemies to appear from the walls. She hugged herself tightly, her strange protective oil leaving a faint scent in the air. "They chase me everywhere," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They want me for war, for power, for things I do not understand." Rian felt a chill crawl down his spine. Who was she really? And why would soldiers hunt her through half the galaxy? Before he could ask more, 3 heavy knocks slammed against the metal door beside them. Rian froze, thinking the hunters had arrived. But when the door slid open, he saw 2 station officers wearing blue armor and carrying data pads. Not enemies, but not exactly friends either. One officer looked at the girl, then at Rian. "You bought this alien female from the market, correct?" he asked in a flat voice. Rian nodded carefully, unsure of what trouble he had stepped into. The officer turned his screen toward Rian, lines of alien script glowing across it. "By Station Law 14B, the officer said, any purchase of a bonded member of the Lumori species is considered a legal union." Rian blinked. Confused, "A legal union," he repeated. The second officer cleared his throat and explained, "It means marriage." Human Rian nearly choked on air. "What?" "I just bought her to keep her safe." The officers did not blink. The Lumori have strict cultural rules. Once bought, they cannot be resold or freed without a binding ritual. Refusal of this rule will result in the alien's termination to prevent tribal conflict. The girl gasped and shrank behind Rian. Rian's stomach twisted painfully. He could hear the panic in her breath and feel the fear radiating off her. She was scared of the officers, scared of the hunters, scared of everything around her. Rian raised his hands helplessly. "Can't I return her?" he asked. The officers shook their heads. "The sale is complete, the bond is active, and the hunters are already in the station." Hunters, the word hit Rian like a shockwave. So the alarms were because of her. Someone powerful wanted her badly enough to send strike teams into a crowded trade station. The first officer handed Rian a thin holopaper. "Sign here," he commanded. "This completes the marriage contract and protects the station from Lumori retaliation." Rian looked down at the glowing lines. His hand shook slightly. He did not want a wife, especially not one who was terrified, hunted, and sold like trash moments ago. But if he didn't sign, they would kill her. Right in front of him, he glanced at the girl. She looked up at him with trembling eyes. There was no demand, no expectation, only fear and a silent plea to live. Rian swallowed hard and signed the document. The holopaper flashed blue and vanished. "It is done," the officer said. "You are legally bound, and she is under your protection." The officers walked away, leaving the 2 of them standing alone in the dim hallway. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Rian leaned against the wall, trying to understand the weight of what had just happened. He was married. Married to a girl he did not know, a girl who smelled of strange oils, a girl who was being hunted across space. The girl stepped closer, her voice fragile. "My name is Luma," she whispered. Rian nodded slowly. "I'm Rian," he answered, trying to give her a small, reassuring smile. Luma hesitated, then said something that made the air around them feel heavier. "Rian, they will come again." Her eyes filled with fear, and something else, something like sorrow. "They do not stop, they do not forgive, and they never fail." Rian's heartbeat quickened. He looked down the empty hallway where the officers had disappeared. He looked at the flickering lights above him. Then he looked at the girl who was now legally his wife. He had bought her for 5 credits, thinking it would save her, but now he realized something far bigger, far darker, was already moving toward them, and whatever hunted Luma was now hunting him too. Rian led Luma through the narrow back corridors of Arkan 7. He kept glancing over his shoulder, checking if anyone followed. The alarms had stopped, but the red warning lights still flashed like beating hearts along the walls. Every flash reminded him he had stepped into a world he did not understand. Luma walked quietly beside him. Her steps were light, almost silent, but her breathing was shaky. The strange scent from her skin filled the hallway. Sharp and earthy, mixed with something sweet. Rian tried not to react to it, but it was so strong that he could taste it on the air. When they reached his small living quarters, he quickly unlocked the door. Inside, he whispered. Guiding her in, the room was simple. A bed, a table, a small cooking unit, and a cracked window that showed the stars. Luma stepped in slowly, as if entering a sacred place. She touched the wall with her fingertips, testing the air. You live alone, she said softly. Rian nodded. Yeah, it's not much. But it's safe. Luma wrapped her arms around herself, her golden eyes shimmering like molten metal. I have not been safe for a long time, she whispered. Rian wanted answers, but he waited. Giving her time to breathe, he handed her a clean blanket. And she held it tightly, as if it was the softest thing she had ever touched. For a moment, she looked less like a hunted alien and more like a lonely girl lost in a place too big for her. Finally, Rian sat across from her and asked, Luma, who is chasing you? Luma hesitated, swallowing hard. Then she lifted her hand and touched a glowing mark on her neck. A mark Rian had not noticed before. A swirling pattern, shaped like a flame, pulsed under her skin. Rian leaned forward, eyes wide. What is that? He asked. Luma lowered her hand slowly. My tribe calls it the lifemark, she said. It is given only to one child in each generation. The child said to carry our future. Her voice trembled at the last word. Rian felt the hair on his arms rise. So, you are important, he asked carefully. Luma nodded, but sadness filled her eyes, important and cursed. She whispered, my people believe I will bring change, but some believe that change will be destruction. Rian tried to follow her words, but the story sounded heavy and ancient. He rubbed his forehead, trying to understand. Then why did they sell you for 5 credits? He asked. The question hung in the air like cold smoke. Luma's shoulders shook. Because one group wanted me dead, she said, her voice breaking. They kidnapped me from my home. But they feared the lifemark might curse them. So they sold me quickly, hoping to hide me. Rian stared at her, stunned. Sold for 5 credits. Just to disappear, he whispered. Luma nodded slowly. They used the smell loyal on me, made it stronger so no one would come close. Rian blinked, realizing the truth. So your smell. It's not natural. Luma shook her head. It protects my skin, yes, but they forced more on me until people could not stand near me. Rian felt anger rising inside him like fire. They treated you like trash, he said. Luma's eyes softened. That is why. When you touched me in the market, shocked, she whispered. No one has touched me with kindness in a long time. Rian looked away, feeling a strange tightness in his chest. He did not know her, yet he felt protective in a way he could not explain. Before he could speak again, Luma suddenly tensed. Her eyes widened, her body stiffened, and she whispered, They are close. Rian froze. How do you know? Luma pressed a hand to her heart. My people can sense danger through the lifemark. It reacts when someone hostile is near. Her glow pulsed brighter for a moment, casting soft light across the room. Then came the sound. A heavy metallic thud from the hallway, then another, then footsteps, slow, powerful, deliberate. Rian's breath caught in his throat. Luma grabbed his wrist, panic filling her voice. Rian. They found me again. Her golden eyes locked onto his, full of fear and trust at the same time. You must not let them take me, she whispered. If they take me now, I will never come back. Rian stood up, heart pounding like a drum. He didn't know how to fight trained hunters. He didn't know how to protect a girl with a mysterious glowing mark. He didn't know why fate had pushed her into his life. But he knew one thing. He wasn't going to let anyone touch her. Not while he was still breathing. The door shook violently as the hunters began to break it down. Luma backed away, trembling. Rian stepped in front of her, fists clenched, fear burning into determination. Whatever waited behind that door was coming for both of them. And this time, Rian was ready to fight. The metal door shook again, harder this time. Dust fell from the old ceiling vents, and the lights flickered weakly as if they were afraid to. Rian felt his heartbeat hammering in his ears, loud and wild. Luma stood behind him, trembling, her golden eyes glowing faintly in the dim room. Another smash slammed into the door, leaving a deep dent in the metal. Whoever stood on the other side was strong, trained, and determined. Rian knew he had only seconds before the door broke open completely. He grabbed Luma's hand and whispered, "We need to run now." Luma nodded, her breath uneven. She pointed toward a small maintenance vent near the back of the room. "We can escape through there," she whispered. "It leads to the old tunnels." Rian didn't question her. He trusted her instinct more than his own right now. He rushed to the vent and pulled off the loose metal panel. Cold air rushed out, smelling like dust, oil, and forgotten places. "Go first," he whispered. Urging Luma forward, she slid inside with surprising speed and grace. Her glowing mark, leaving faint light on the metal walls. Rian glanced back just in time to see the door crack under one final blow. A deep growl echoed from the hallway, heavy footsteps closing in. Rian crawled into the vent and closed the panel behind him. The darkness swallowed them, but at least they were hidden. The vent was narrow. Barely big enough for one person, Rian crawled behind Luma, following the faint light from her lifemark. Above them, the pounding continued, loud. Angry strikes as the hunters searched the room they had escaped. Rian's breath shook, but he pushed forward. After several long minutes, the vent opened into a larger maintenance tunnel. The air was cold, and faint steam drifted from broken pipes. Luma dropped down first, landing softly. Rian followed, wincing as he hit the metal floor. "They will search for us," Luma whispered, her voice filled with fear. "They always search. They never stop." Rian placed a hand on her shoulder, trying to steady her. "We're still alive. And we're not giving up," he said. Luma looked at him with something like hope and something like sadness. A distant explosion suddenly shook the tunnel. The lights flickered again, then switched to emergency red. Luma's eyes widened. "They have breached the outer station walls," she whispered. "They want me so badly they will destroy everything." Rian clenched his fists, anger rising inside him like fire. "This isn't your fault," he said. "They are the ones doing this." But Luma shook her head. "My existence causes danger. My people fear my power. Others want it." Before Rian could respond, a robotic voice echoed through the tunnels. "Target detected in lower quadrant. Deploy scout units." Rian grabbed Luma's hand and pulled her deeper into the tunnel. "Move," he whispered. "We have to stay ahead of them." The tunnel twisted left and right, leading them into darker and colder areas of the station. Old machines hummed softly in the shadows. Forgotten long ago, suddenly, Luma stopped and pressed her palm to the wall. Her glowing mark brightened for a moment, lighting the tunnel around them. "There are 3 hunters above us," she whispered, "and 2 behind." Rian stared at her with shock. "You can sense them?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "The life mark shows me danger if I listen to it." Rian swallowed hard. "So we're surrounded." Luma nodded again, her voice soft. "Yes." "But not trapped." She pointed to a hatch on the floor, barely visible under dust. Rian pulled it open, revealing a ladder leading downward into darkness. "Where does this go?" he asked. Luma hesitated before answering. "To the launch bay," she whispered. "But it is old and dangerous." Rian grinned weakly. "Everything today is dangerous." Luma gave a small, nervous nod. They climbed down together, closing the hatch above them. The ladder seemed endless, each step echoing in the vast shaft. Strange humming sounds rose from the darkness below, mechanical and ghostly. Halfway down, Rian felt the ladder shake slightly. He looked up, his heart freezing. A glowing red scan light swept across the hatch above them. A hunter drone had found their trail. "Faster," he whispered urgently. "Go, Luma, go." Luma moved quicker, her hands sliding over the cold metal. Rian followed as fast as he could, knowing the drone might burn through the hatch any second. At last, they reached the bottom, dropping onto a dusty old platform. The air smelled like old fuel and rusted engines. Ahead of them stood a large door, marked with fading letters. Launch Bay 09, restricted. Luma looked at Rian, her voice trembling. "This is the only way. We must open it." Rian nodded and placed his hand against the door's ancient control panel. Sparks flew, and the door groaned as it slowly slid open. Inside was darkness and silence, but it was their only chance as they stepped into the forgotten launch bay. Rian knew one thing for certain. The hunters were not far behind, and the next fight could decide both their lives. The old launch bay was colder than the tunnels above. Dust floated in the air like tiny ghosts, moving slowly through the weak emergency lights. Rian stepped inside carefully, his eyes scanning every corner of the darkness. Luma followed close behind. Clutching the blanket Rian had given her earlier, the huge room felt dead. No engines warming up. No workers shouting orders. No ships roaring to life. Only silence. Heavy, thick, unsettling silence. But they had no choice. The hunters were closing in. Rian moved toward a large shape covered by a rusted tarp. He pulled the tarp aside, sending a cloud of dust into the air. Underneath was a small, old cargo ship. Its metal cracked and faded. It looked like it had not flown in years, maybe decades. "We can use this," Rian whispered hopefully. Luma shook her head slowly. "It will not start. Its energy crystals are dry." Rian touched the control panel, trying to wake the ship. Nothing happened. Not even a flicker of light. Before he could try again, Luma gasped and grabbed his arm. Her golden eyes glowed brighter, and she whispered in fear. "They found us." A sharp mechanical shriek echoed through the launch bay. A hunter drone glided in through the tunnel entrance, its red eyes glowing like burning coal. It scanned the room, locking onto Luma with a murderous hum. Then more footsteps followed, heavy, armored, determined. Rian pulled Luma behind the cargo ship as plasma bolts flashed across the room. The shots hit the floor with sizzling heat. Melting metal into glowing puddles, Luma covered her ears. Trembling violently, Rian held her close, whispering, "Stay with me. Stay calm." But Luma suddenly collapsed to her knees. Her breathing became quick and sharp, her lifemark glowing brighter and brighter until it lit the dark room. Rian knelt beside her, panic rising in his chest. "Luma, what's happening?" he asked, voice shaking. "My skin burns," Luma whispered, her voice cracking. "The protection oil. It is fading." Rian touched her arm gently and felt heat pulsing under her skin. It felt like she was melting from the inside. She pressed her forehead against his chest, tears slipping down her cheeks. "If the oil fades completely, I will die," she whispered. Rian's heart clenched painfully. He had no idea how to save her, but he refused to let her die. The hunter drone shrieked again, firing another blast that narrowly missed them. Rian grabbed Luma's face gently, forcing her to look at him. "Luma, listen to me," he said. "Stay with me. Don't give up." She blinked slowly, her eyes full of fear and pain. Then something strange happened. When Rian held her hands, her lifemark flared with a brilliant light. A warm energy surged through both of them. Like a shock mixed with soft heat, Luma inhaled sharply as the glow spread across her body. "What is this?" Rian whispered in awe. Luma stared at her glowing skin. "It is the bond," she whispered softly, almost afraid. "The marriage bond." It awakened. The glow around Luma grew stronger, forming a soft, shimmering shield around her. The next plasma bolt hit the shield and scattered into sparks. Rion stared in disbelief. "You can make a shield," he whispered. Luma shook her head, bewildered, "Not alone. Only when you touch me." Her words hung in the air like magic. The hunters fired again. And again the shield protected them. Rion tightened his grip on her hands, feeling the warm energy flow stronger. He didn't understand how it worked, but he knew they had a chance now. The drone screeched with frustration, its red lights flashing wildly. It charged forward, planning to break the shield by force. Rion pulled Luma to her feet and shouted, "We need to move now." Together, they ran toward the cargo ship, the shield glowing around them like a bubble of living light. The drone struck the shield again, but this time the energy pushed it backward. It crashed into the wall with a metallic scream, sparks flying everywhere. Luma collapsed inside the ship's entry ramp, breathing heavily. Rian knelt beside her, feeling his own chest burning from the effort. "Are you okay?" he whispered. Luma nodded weakly. "The bond. It protects us. But it drains me." Rian looked at her glowing hand in his. "I won't let them take you," he said quietly. Luma stared at him with fragile trust. "You already saved me. More than anyone ever has," she whispered. Footsteps thundered outside the ship. The hunters had arrived. Their shadows stretched across the launch bay floor like dark claws. Rian's pulse raced. The shield flickered weakly. Luma was running out of strength. Rian took a deep breath and looked around the ship. He spotted a small emergency ignition unit on the wall. If he could power the ship even for a moment, they might escape. He squeezed Luma's hand gently. "Stay with me just a little longer," he whispered. Her lifemark glowed faintly in response. Outside, the hunters aimed their weapons, preparing to storm the ship. Inside, Rian prepared to do the impossible. The bond had awakened. Luma's hidden power was real, and now their lives depended on trusting each other completely. The cargo ship shook as the hunters fired again from outside. Rian slammed the emergency ignition unit with his fist, forcing the old wires to spark to life. A low hum spread through the ship, weak but real. It was a heartbeat, the ship's first heartbeat in years. Luma leaned against the wall, her eyes half closed. Her lifemark glowing softly like a fading ember. She looked fragile, as if one more blast outside could shatter her completely. Rian rushed to her side, touching her hand to strengthen the bond. A soft glow returned to her skin, just enough to keep her standing. The hunters outside shouted commands, their boots pounding against the metal floor. They were preparing a final assault. Rian knew they had seconds left before the ship would be flooded with soldiers. He steadied himself and whispered to Luma, "We need to fly, or we're done." Luma opened her eyes slowly. I can try to guide the ship," she whispered. "My people trained me to sense energy." Rian nodded. Lifting her gently into the pilot seat, he sat beside her, gripping the manual controls with shaking hands. The ignition sputtered, coughed, and then slowly came alive. The old cargo ship groaned like a sleeping beast waking up after a long winter. Panels flickered, lights buzzed, and the engine rumbled with uneven power. But it worked. It actually worked. Just as the main door of the launch bay burst open, Rian slammed the takeoff lever. The ship lifted off the ground with a roar. Hunters jumped aside as dust exploded around them. The cargo ship shot upward. Scraping the ceiling of the launch bay, metal screamed. Sparks flew. But the ship forced its way into the upper shaft. Rian held the controls tightly, guiding the ship through the narrow exit tunnel. Behind them, the hunters fired desperately, their blasts bouncing off the walls in wild streaks of light. Luma gasped, clutching her chest. Her lifemark glowed brighter. Reacting to the danger, Rian placed his hand over hers, strengthening the bond again. Warm energy flowed through them, giving Luma the power to stay awake when the ship finally burst out into open space. Rian let out a long, shaky breath. Stars stretched out in every direction, peaceful and endless. But he knew peace wouldn't last long. He activated the autopilot and turned to Luma. "We're safe. For now," he whispered. Luma nodded weakly. Her golden eyes were distant, filled with fear and memories she had tried to forget. Rian sat beside her and spoke gently. "Luma, I need to understand what's happening. Why are they hunting you so hard? Who exactly are you?" For a moment, Luma said nothing. Then she lifted her hand and touched the glowing flame-shaped mark on her neck. "It is time you know the truth," she whispered. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were heavy with secrets. "My people, the Lumari, are an old tribe," she began. "We live far from war, far from the galaxy's violence, far from greed. But every 1,000 years, a child is born with the lifemark, a child with the power to sense danger, control energy, and guide fate." Rian listened quietly. He didn't understand everything, but he understood enough. Luma was special. More special than he had imagined. "Some say the lifemark child brings peace," Luma continued. "But others say the child brings destruction. That fear split my tribe in two." She closed her eyes and took a shaky breath. "One group swore to protect me," she whispered. "The other swore to kill me." Rian felt anger tighten in his chest. "They tried to kill you because they were afraid of you." Luma nodded slowly. "Yes. And because they believed the prophecy?" "What prophecy?" Rian asked. Luma opened her eyes, her gaze deep and sad. "The prophecy that the lifemark child will choose a partner from another species, and that together they will change the future of the galaxy." Rian's breath caught. He understood what she meant. The forced marriage, the awakened bond, the shield, it was all connected. "That is why they sold me quickly," Luma whispered. "They feared I might bond with someone. So they covered me in strong oils to keep everyone away." Rian felt a painful ache in his chest. She had suffered so much because of a prophecy she never chose. But fate had brought her to him, a simple worker who paid 5 credits without understanding the price. Luma reached out and touched his hand gently. "You did not run from me," she whispered. "You touched me when no one else would. The bond chose you." Before I did, Rian swallowed hard, unsure of how to respond. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't a warrior. He was just someone who couldn't walk away from a frightened girl in a cage. But Luma looked at him as if he were something more. Before he could speak, the ship's alarm beeped loudly. A red light flashed on the screen. Rian checked the radar and felt his blood turn cold. A large ship had appeared behind them, moving fast. Luma's eyes widened in terror. "They found us again," she whispered. Rian tightened his grip on the controls. The truth was out. The bond was real. And now, their fight was just beginning. The radar alarm kept beeping, sharp and steady. Rian stared at the screen, his heart sinking. A massive ship was behind them, growing closer every second. Its engines burned bright blue. Cutting through space like a hunting beast, Luma pressed a hand to her lifemark. Feeling its warning pulse, "They sent the royal hunters," she whispered. Her voice breaking, Rian looked at her, confused and tense. "The royal hunters," he repeated. Luma nodded slowly, fear glowing in her eyes. "They serve the faction that believes I must be controlled," she whispered. "They have chased me since the night I escaped my planet." Rian gripped the controls tightly. "Then we can't let them catch you now," he said firmly. The cargo ship shook as the enemy fired a warning blast. A glowing beam passed above them, shaking the metal hull and rattling every bolt. Luma gasped and held on to the chair. "They are not warning us," she whispered weakly. "They are aiming to disable the ship." Rian pushed the engines to full power. But the old ship groaned with protest. Smoke leaked from one of the back vents. The speed increased, but not enough. The hunter ship remained locked on them. Relentless Luma suddenly leaned forward, her breathing heavy. Her lifemark glowed brighter. She pressed her hand against the ship's console. Soft golden light spread across the metal like a living vine. Rian watched in shock as the ship's weak engines became stronger. The old lights brightened, the panels steadied. Luma whispered, "I can help the ship move." But only for a short time. Rian shook his head. No, Luma. It hurts you every time you use your power. But Luma met his eyes. There is no running without power, she whispered, and no survival without the bond. Her words cut through him. She wasn't wrong. The hunters would tear them apart if they slowed down even a little. Rian placed his hand over hers. Warm energy flowed between them, stronger than before. The ship surged forward, speed doubling. Stars streaked past the windows like falling sparks. But the hunter ship did not fall behind. A cold voice echoed through their comm system. Lumori subject detected. Surrender now, or your bonded partner will be eliminated. Luma trembled. Her voice cracked as she whispered, they will kill you first. Rian clenched his teeth. I'm not leaving you, he said. You're my partner now. Whether fate or accident made it so, tears filled her golden eyes. No one had ever chosen her before. Not because of prophecy, not because of fear, but because of care, because of heart. The hunter ship fired again. A beam hit the cargo ship's side, sending sparks across the controls. The ship spun violently, alarms blaring. Rian struggled to steady it. Luma cried out as the lifemark burned painfully bright. We can't outrun them, Rian gasped. Luma nodded with trembling lips. I know, she whispered. But we can outsmart them. She pointed ahead. A dead moon floated in the distance, covered in dark craters and thick shadows. Rian understood instantly they could hide there. Use the terrain as a shield. He angled the ship toward the moon. The hunter ship followed, firing again and again. Rian dodged each shot with difficulty. The old ship shook, panels flickering, but it kept going. When they reached the dark side of the moon, Rian dropped into a deep crater. The hunter ship scanned above, but could not see them directly. They had a moment, only a moment to think. Luma leaned against him, exhausted, her glowing mark dimming slowly. Rian, she whispered weakly. There is something I must tell you. He turned to her, his breath still unsteady. I'm listening, he said softly. She touched his cheek gently. Back on my world. They told me the lifemark chooses the heart it connects with. My power only awakens when I feel trust. When I feel closeness, her voice softened, trembling like fragile light. The bond works because it chose you. And because I care for you. Rian's chest tightened. He gently brushed away the tear on her cheek. I care for you too, Luma, he whispered. From the moment I saw you in that cage, something inside me changed. Luma lowered her forehead against his. The lifemark glowed again. Soft and warm, not from fear, but from emotion. Outside, the hunter's ship lowered into the crater. Its lights scanned the shadows. Searching for movement, time was running out. Rian took a deep breath. Luma. Can your power do more than shields? Luma hesitated. Yes. But only if the bond is complete, she whispered, and only if I fully trust the one beside me. Rian placed both hands gently around hers. Then trust me, he whispered. I'm here. I won't leave you. Not now, not ever. Luma closed her eyes, letting her heart answer. Her lifemark exploded in bright golden light. Energy filled the entire ship, humming with warmth and power. Outside, the hunter ship shook violently as its sensors went blind, its systems overloaded by the wave of golden energy. With a final burst of light, the hunter ship spun out of control and crashed into the far side of the crater. Silent, defeated, Luma collapsed into Rian's arms. Breathing softly, Rian held her close, his heart full and warm. You saved us, he whispered. Luma smiled weakly. No. We saved each other, she said. The stars outside the crater glowed softly. They were free at last, not because of destiny, but because of the bond they chose, because of love that grew from fear, kindness, and courage. Rian looked at Luma, his strange 5-credit bride, and knew she had become the greatest treasure of his life.